Confirmation hearings are now underway for President Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, if confirmed, Jackson will fill the seat of retiring Justice Stephen Breyer and be the first black woman on the nation's top court. So for more, let's bring in Bloomberg Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr. Greg, today is the first day of the hearings, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee are giving their opening statements. What have we learned so far? How are they setting the tone for this hearing?
Well, Republicans are spending an awful lot of time talking about Brett Kavanaugh and the hearing against him over the sexual assault allegations, and they're saying, we're not going to be like that. We're not going to turn this into a spectacle. Democrats are talking a lot about Ketanji Brown Jackson's record, in particular her service as a public defender. They're saying that is a perspective the Supreme Court doesn't have. That will be an asset. And both of them are sort of keeping an eye on the November elections, sort of test driving some issues that might be important then.
Well, there are a lot of firsts here, Greg, for Judge Jackson. She would be the first black woman, first public defender to enter the Supreme Court of the United States. What would you say is the most underrated first that she represents?
Certainly a public defender, and also just as the first defense lawyer in a very long time, somebody who has worked as a criminal defense lawyer. The Supreme Court, both now and over the years, has had an awful lot of prosecutors. And so she will offer a perspective about what it's like to be a criminal defendant in the system. She's also was a member of the Sentencing Commission, so she is intimately familiar with how criminal defendants are sentenced. She will have, no doubt, views on what seems fair, what seems constitutional, what doesn't.
Right, and that's something, of course, that President Biden has made clear, that by bringing in someone who has a different background, who has a different profile from past Supreme Court justices, she would be adding to the tapestry that our highest court offers. I'm curious, though, because Republicans are trying to make something of the fact that she went to Harvard and benefited from affirmative action in doing so, and therefore what is biased on affirmative action. I'm not sure the connection there, especially with the lawsuit on Harvard and admissions coming up. Walk us through the thinking and the point that they're trying to make here.
Well, I think the key point they're trying to make is that she is a member of Harvard University's Board of Overseers. Her term expires this spring, but because of that role, she may have to recuse herself from the Supreme Court's affirmative action case, at least with regard to Harvard. Now, there are actually two cases. There's also one involving the University of North Carolina, and it's not clear that she would feel the need to recuse from that. But obviously, it would be a big deal if the court's only black woman would have to disqualify herself from potentially a landmark case like that.
Okay, sorry, my mistake. I was drawing too strong a connection there between her being black and her potentially making a decision on this case. Maddie?
Yeah, and I should probably clarify, I'm not aware that she benefited from affirmative action, and I don't know that anybody has raised that particular issue with her.
Well, it does sort of make me think about the issues that Republicans are sort of zeroing in on when it comes to Judge Jackson. And I do want to circle back to the public defender argument that they're making. It seems like that's coming up a lot here. I'm curious, Greg, why is that significant? How could that impact the way that she might view the law or decisions when it comes to her work with SCOTUS?
Well, prosecutors and the police win an awful lot of the time at the Supreme Court, and they no doubt still will, even if she wins confirmation. But to be able to talk about the issues of criminal law from the perspective of somebody who is, counseling a defendant who may see a process that seems extremely unfair, will just be a new perspective that the court doesn't have. And sometimes these things are not cut and dried in the minds of justices, and discussions that they have in their conference room can make a difference. And so it may make a difference for her just to be able to add that perspective to the discussion.
We're talking about this as if it's going to go to a full vote before the Senate, her nomination. What are the odds that her nomination will make it out of committee? Because the Senate Judiciary Committee is split between Republicans and Democrats, right?
It is, but there is a mechanism that can get it to the to the Senate floor, even if they are evenly divided. A Supreme Court nomination can't die in that way, the way some other nominations can. So she will get that full Senate vote. Every sign is that Democrats are solidly behind her, and that's all the votes she needs, since the Vice President Harris can cast the tie-breaking vote if necessary.
Any potential concern with Manchin and Sinema?
No, they've been solidly behind her so far, and they voted for every Biden judicial nominee so far. This is not like Build Back Better, where Joe Manchin is somebody who everybody is eyeing. Barring some major surprise, she should at least get those 50 Democratic votes and might pick up a handful of Republicans as well.
Yeah, but if you go by history, Lindsey Graham has also backed every Supreme Court nominee since he came to office in 2003. And he's now giving some indication that he perhaps will not support her nomination?
He is giving that indication. It will be interesting to see what he does, because he's always been very proud of the fact that he voted for Justice Sotomayor, he voted for Justice Kagan, and he has used that when there's a Republican nominee saying to his Democratic colleagues, look, you should support our person just like I supported yours. But as you said, he is signaling he might not go there, in part because he wanted Joe Biden to pick somebody different, a federal district judge from his state of South Carolina.
Well, when you look at the next couple of days, today we're hearing opening remarks. Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to be all about the question portion of the hearings. Greg, what do you envision lawmakers really zeroing in on when it comes to the Q&A portion? What do you think they're going to get really into the nitty-gritty about when it comes to Judge Jackson's record?
There will certainly be a lot of questions about criminal law, her rulings, her work as a public defender and in private practice, her representation of accused terrorists at Guantanamo Bay. There'll be questions about her judicial philosophy. When she was an appeals court nominee, she said in a written response to a question, I don't have a judicial philosophy per se. Well, Republicans are signaling they're not satisfied with that, and they're going to want to know more from her about how she would go about interpreting the Constitution. And Democrats are basically going to be about trying to buttress her and trying to point out her strong qualities and the experience that she has and the new perspectives she would provide to the court.
Does every nominee have to articulate a judicial philosophy, or does the hearing, or has the hearing in the past become a way to kind of circumvent being pinned down to any one idea?
Well, certainly judicial nominees tend to try to avoid getting pinned down in the confirmation process. That said, a lot of them have said things in the past that they're then asked about and they can't exactly walk away from. President Trump's judicial nominees, to varying degrees, talked about interpreting the Constitution in an originalist manner, as looking at the words of the Constitution and their meaning at the time they were adopted. That is, kind of conservative orthodoxy now in terms of constitutional interpretation. Republicans say they wish Judge Jackson would say the same thing. She almost certainly won't. It will be interesting to hear whether she says some of the things about, like what her former boss, Justice Breyer, said about the Constitution, about how it's supposed to be workable and work for the people and take more of a pragmatic approach rather than the formalist approach of the conservatives.
Well, I'm glad you bring up Justice Breyer, because she, as you said, served as a clerk to him, and his retirement is opening up this position. What do we know about how his kind of stewardship may have impacted her thinking on the law?
Well, we know that the two of them are close. He thinks very highly of her. She certainly saw how he worked in action and has expressed admiration for him. So one can imagine that she will at least see value in his kind of consensus-building approach, maybe his pragmatism. It may not be exactly what she reflects, but she'll undoubtedly remember that part of Justice Breyer and at least think about, no doubt, what would he do in this situation as she tries to make up her mind about how she will approach various cases and issues.
And of course, the backdrop here as well is that the majority of Americans do support her nomination. Our big number here is how 55% of Americans believe that Ketanji Brown Jackson should be confirmed by the Senate. This is according to a recent Monmouth University national poll. What is the thinking among the public in terms of what she adds to the highest court?
Well, certainly there's a lot of attention about her being potentially the first black woman on the Supreme Court. There's another poll I saw that showed that even among people who can't name her, there's a significant number who know that fact about her, that she would be the first black woman to the Supreme Court. So that will always be kind of the thing about her that makes history. And potentially in these hearings, they'll get a chance to get to know her, not just what she thinks about the Constitution or criminal law or what have you, but feel like they know her a little bit as a person. There'll be some talk about her family. There'll be talk about her background, her parents, all that sort of stuff. And, she may well become one of these figures on the court that is very widely recognized, much like another liberal justice, Sonia Sotomayor.
Well, Greg, we've talked about this before. Given that the American electorate is in the majority in terms of supporting Judge Jackson's confirmation here, what does that do to President Biden's approval rating, which we've seen kind of wavering lately? And, in the history of you reporting on the Supreme Court, have you seen approval ratings for president go up or down based on who gets confirmed to the court under their tenure?
It's usually hard to draw a line from one thing to another. Certainly President Biden, as you indicated, had some sluggish approval ratings and could use a boost. This is something that one would imagine could well help him with both progressive groups and African-American voters, kind of shoring up his support there. Obviously, this is speculation, but anytime a president gets a Supreme Court nominee through, especially when it is without a whole lot of controversy, that can only be a good thing for a president, or that generally is a good thing for a president, showing that they have accomplished things, and it gives them something to talk about when they eventually go out on the campaign trail.
Yeah, well, that is definitely the White House's hope. But you know better, Greg, because you've been covering the Supreme Court for almost 25 years. Where do you think we might get an unexpected surprise here in the process?
In terms of the Jackson process, I'm not sure we're going to get a lot of surprises. Honestly, very little about this has been a big surprise. Justice Breyer was widely thought of to be a decent candidate to retire. Her name was always at the top, or at least near the top of lists of people to replace him. And so far, everyone has, on both sides of the aisle, have essentially said the kind of things you would expect them to say. So barring something in her background or some major mistake coming along in this process, it seems like this will go along kind of as folks expected a few months ago.
All right, well, we will likely be talking with you a lot about this week, Greg. So thank you in advance for your time with us and giving us that context. Again, that was Bloomberg Supreme Court reporter Greg Storth.